Hi, everyone. Welcome to AgriBusiness Global Report. My name is Renee Targos. I'm the group editor for the AgriBusiness Group and your host for today's show. We will be talking with Bob Trogele, CEO of ProAgInvest, about what's happening with three powerhouses in the global crop protection market. So we're talking about China, Russia, and Brazil. Bob, what do you see on the horizon for these countries?
Well, I think each has their own challenges going forward. Um, Maybe I'll start with Brazil, right? As an agricultural powerhouse, I think that would maybe interest the audience the most. So, I raised a question in our annual report when we talk about what do we see the challenges coming up. I think it was last year going into 2025. I think the key question was how long will the vendor industry, and I'm talking about chemical supplier, nutritional suppliers, seed suppliers, equipment suppliers, finance the Brazilian agriculture? The Brazilian government is aware of that issue because they've been, they formed, I think, a financial entity which is trying to counterbalance that a little bit so they become a little bit more independent in that regard. But companies have been extending, working capital days over 300. At times, the product didn't hit the ground or the service didn't hit the ground, and it came back, right? It caused major financial disruptions for some of the companies that were vendors for Brazil. But really, the issue right now in Brazil is high inflation, high interest costs, and this has caused a number of farm bankruptcies, uh, distribution, retail bankruptcies. So money right now in Brazil is very expensive, and they have a credit issue. Um, they've got to work their way out of that, right? And they haven't had really great success politically, right? I think they had one of their last president is under house arrest because he was trying to do a coup, right? Then they had the one before that, I think, was in jail and for corruption. Um, and 30% of the Brazilian GDP is agriculture. So, both this political unrest and this credit risk in Brazil should be, top of mind for any investor going into Brazil, including, companies that are doing business there, right, in the agricultural space. So that's a challenge for everyone. And the Brazilians have to solve that, and suppliers have to solve that for themselves. So that's it's right there now. Okay, what the outcome will look like, we'll see. Russia, of course, I'm going to move on, is in a situation where they're still at war, right? So the economy is driven by them changing their manufacturing footprint to a military manufacturing capability, right, through the Ukraine war, right? They've had issues with their main income source, which is oil, right? And the Europeans are moving away from them. There's talks recently in the press about an embargo, right? That would cut off their money supply. And then, of course, any war causes a lot of attrition, both on the human side and on the capital side, right? You're just destroying things. You're destroying lives. You're destroying families. You're destroying equipment, buildings, et cetera, et cetera. It's got to have its toll on Russia. But, Russia is traditionally, when it has been at war, a country of attrition. And but it's challenged, right? It still has 100 million people, and it has to feed those people, and so I think for a lot of investors, when the war with the Ukraine started, pulled out. So the quick question there is, from an agricultural industry and a supplier industry, will companies go back in, right? Um, so I think not an easy one to answer. We'll again see how that evolves. Then, we have China, and China is, highly successful in many areas. I mean, I consider them probably, if we look at becoming independent as far as energy and alternative forms of energy, they've done just, a tremendous, I would say, excellent job in getting there, right? But it's been at a price, right? The price has been, they built, uh, many coal plants. So pollution is an issue in China, right? In the agrochemical sector, they've built way too much capacity. And there's more, I say there's more supply than there is demand on a global basis, right? Therefore, prices have really come down and margins have been crushed globally in the chemical sector. Um, and yeah, China is still running on an investment economy, meaning putting shovels in the ground versus, a consumer economy. The consumer economy, I was watching the Japanese news last night and listening to Chinese mainland citizens moving to Hong Kong for higher wages, but they were talking about how bad the both the construction industry and everything is in China. And yeah, they still have high unemployment, right? There seems to be a lot of political tensions with Taiwan. Um, so my question really is, when will China finally settle into, I would say, a economic stable situation? And they did have record exports this year, believe it or not. Considering all of that, but that's not. They need a strong domestic economy, and they don't have it, right? So if you look behind the curtain, things are not good in China, and we're all in the agricultural industry very dependent on China, both as a customer and as a supplier. So it's important that China settles down into a stable situation.